The very first website I ever developed and deployed to the internet was a portfolio website. And ever since, I've been absolutely obsessed with them. And nigh on 3 years later, I think I have discovered perfection, which is exactly what I'll be sharing with you in today's web portfolio tutorial. The portfolio we'll be building is beautiful. It's elegant, sleek, stylish, responsive, and best of all, it's actually really easy to code. We don't need any silly JavaScript frameworks or CSS libraries. All we need is plain old HTML and CSS. Welcome, my friends, to today's tutorial where we'll build and deploy this very portfolio website. I'll step you through the entire process, making sure it's easy and understandable, so it doesn't matter if you're a complete beginner, no prior experience, you can do it too. Plus, by the end of the video, you'll actually be able to call yourself an HTML and CSS web developer, so that's absolutely slick, and you can plaster the internet with links to your amazing portfolio website. As always, if you enjoy the video, smash the like and subscribe buttons. Love that support, and with that all said, let's dive into the code. So we're going to start off this project inside of our Visual Studio Code editor, and we're going to hit open, and we're going to create a project inside of our desired project directory. So here I'm going to call this the Ultimate Web Portfolio. Once we have hit create on that, we can now go ahead and open that up, and that will replace our window, and we can see that we are inside of that folder directory because it shows up in our Explorer right here. Now for this tutorial, we're going to need to create two files. The first one is an index.html. The HTML is the suffix or the extension required to create an HTML file. And then we're going to have a second one called styles.css, and this is going to have all of our CSS styles inside of it. Now this file can stay blank for the minute. However, to get the boilerplate base code for an HTML document, we're going to take advantage of Visual Studio Code's IntelliSense. And if I hit the exclamation key, we see that it will come up with the boilerplate code, and I can hit enter on that, and that's going to initialize the base HTML document for us. Now for those unfamiliar, here we basically have all of our HTML inside of the HTML tags. We have a doc type that specifies the HTML document, and then we have the head tags which contain the meta information for our page. This stuff typically isn't visible, and then we have the body which will contain all of the information that is going to be visible on the page that we then style. The first thing we're going to do is just retitle our homepage to whatever your name is, like so. And if you wanted, you could even add a little emoji on the end for a bit of extra flair. Now to boot up our document inside of a browser window, we're going to come over to the extension tab right here and look up Live Server. If we find it up the top, you'll want to install it, and once installed, you'll be able to come back into your index.html document, right click and hit open with Live Server, and that will boot up a browser window with our page. You can see that the title has updated, and we have the little flame emoji up the top. And this is going to live reload our web page so that if I make changes in here, they immediately show up inside of our browser window. So this is where we'll see our portfolio come to life as we develop it. Now the first thing I like to do in my web pages is import all of the necessary meta information, specifically Google Fonts and Font Awesome icons. So we're first going to come over to Google and just look up Google Fonts. These will all be linked in the description down below. And once in here, the font that we're going to be using for our project today is Inter. Once we've found the font Inter, we're now going to add every single font variant to our selection, all the way up to the black, and then we can come up to the view selected families right up here, and we'll see that we have a link tag and a copy button. If we hit copy, we can now paste this link underneath the title, still within the opening and closing head tags, like so, and that will allow us to use that font. The other one we're going to import is the Font Awesome CDN. So if we just Google that, we can come over to the CDN.js and find the top link and just paste that right underneath the Google Fonts link that we imported earlier. Once again, these pages will both be linked in the description down below. After adding those two link tags, we're just going to add one more. It's going to be of the relationship style sheet, and it's going to have an H reference, which is just how it can locate the document to styles.css, and that will be a self-closing tag. And if we save that, we can see that even though we have linked our document, nothing actually happens. And so if we come into our styles.css, we're going to start it off by first using the asterisk selector, which selects every HTML element in our document. and we're going to reset the default margin to 0, the default padding to 0, and we're going to give every element a box sizing of border box. Upon saving that, we can see that our ASD has been pushed into the top hand corner, so that's all working. And the other thing we'll do in here is just set the font family of everything to enter with a backup of sans serif, and we can now see that that font has indeed updated. With that all done, we can clear that out and start adding some elements. The first element we're going to have is a header. This is going to have all of our header and navigation items, so we could start off with an H1 that's just your initials, and then we're going to have a nav section, and inside of the nav we're going to have an anchor tag, and this one might say GitHub, and we might have another one that says LinkedIn. Underneath the header we're going to have the main section of our document, and this is going to have another H1, and this is going to be our full name, so James MacArthur or whatever your full name might be. Underneath that we're going to have a paragraph, and that says I write code and build projects. I might actually go ahead and wrap those two inside of a div, and then underneath that we can have a secondary div, and within there we're going to have another div that contains an image. The image is going to have a source equal to empty string for the minute and an alt tag equal to profile image. We'll come back and fill this out shortly. And then underneath this div we're going to have a secondary div, and this one is going to have some further divs. And in here we're going to have an icon, which we'll fill out later, and then we're going to have a paragraph, and we're just going to duplicate it 3 times for the minute. And then underneath this div we're going to have one last div, which is going to have an anchor tag, and this anchor tag is going to contain a paragraph that says email me. And then underneath this div I'm going to wrap all of this stuff inside of a section, just to give our document great semantic structure. And then underneath this we're going to have a second section, and this one is going to have a paragraph that says latest projects, and then beneath that we're going to have a div that has our actual projects, and we will fill that out shortly. So that's what our page looks like currently. Obviously it's pretty atrocious, but it will come along shortly. The next thing we're going to do is come back into our CSS sheet, and we're going to come up the top and set some CSS variables. Now CSS variables save us from having to repeatedly write out certain styles. It's mostly going to be colors, and we set these variables inside of the semicolon root section. And the first one I'm going to make is primary color, and that's going to be set equal to #ADF0D4. Then after that we'll have another one, it's going to be secondary color, and that is going to be #1FD8A4. And at this point I should also mention that the link to the GitHub repository for this code base will be in the description down below. And then the last one will be --background color, and we'll set that equal to #0D1512, and those are our colors done. And now we can come down beneath the asterisk and we can set a background equal to var. That's going to allow us to use the variable, and we can say background color. If we save that, we can see everything changes. In the same place, we're going to set the color of everything equal to var primary color, --primary color. That changes our text color to the following. And then on selected elements, we're going to say darker text. In here, we're just going to set the color to var --. Secondary color so that we can come back and style it later. The next thing we're going to do on our header and main and footer sections, we haven't added a footer yet but we will shortly, is set the maximum width of the page equal to 700 pixels. We're going to give these elements a margin of 0 vertically and auto horizontally, and we're also going to give them a width of 100% of the parent container until chosen otherwise. And inside of the body we're going to set a minimum height of this element to 100% of the view height, a display equal to flex, a flex direction equal to column, and that should do us pretty well for the minute. And the one thing I forgot to do on the maximum width is set a pixel amount. And now if we expand our page, we can see it reaches a maximum width and then centers itself within the total width. Additionally, inside of the body we'll set a gap equal to 72 pixels. That's just going to push everything down a little bit. And inside of the header, which we can choose next, we're going to give this a display of flex, align the items centrally, and then justify the content space between so that it pushes itself to either side. And once again, inside of the body, we'll give everything a padding equal to 14 pixels so that everything just sits inwards a little bit. Inside the header, we'll also set a gap of 14 pixels in here as well. And then after the header, we can select the nav. The nav was within the header. And we're going to give these elements a color of the variable, and it's going to be a secondary color, like so. And if we save that, we can see that text color just get a bit darker there. And we'll also give it a display of flex, a flex direction of column, and a gap, this time of 32 pixels, so a bit of a larger gap. And I lie, that was actually meant to be a line item center, not flex direction. So now they just sit a little bit further apart. Inside of the nav, if you recall, we had some anchor tags. The anchor tags, we can very simply select the nav and the anchor tags within the nav. And then after that, we're going to select the hover property of the anchor tag. And we're going to give it an opacity of 0.7. And the other thing we'll quickly do is come back up to our asterisk selector and just give everything a transition duration of 200 milliseconds. That means when I select these links right here, they load as such, and it just has a slight hover effect, which looks nice. The other thing I'll do is select the nav anchor and just make sure that it has a cursor pointer effect, so that now we get these cursor pointer effects on that. And that will just about do it for our header for the minute. The one thing I might do, however, is just quickly drop this down to an H2 text size so it's a little bit smaller. And just looks a bit better with our page. So the next thing we're going to do is select some elements in here, such as this one, and give them the darker text style so that we can see it gets a little bit darker. I'm also going to give this element here a class of name container. And if we come into our styles.css, we can now go ahead and style the name container and give that a display of flex, a flex direction of column, and a gap of 14 pixels. That will just push them apart a little bit. Maybe we'll go for a bigger gap of 32 pixels, I think. And that hasn't showed up because we also have to save this element. We can see that pushes them apart a little bit more. I might drop that to an 8 pixels so it's a little bit closer. Above this, I'm going to select the main. The main contains the sections. And I'm going to give the main a display of a flex direction of column. I'm actually going to share this style with the section in addition to the main container style or the main container class. And that means that I can remove those styles from there so that they're not duplicated. And what I'm going to do with the main is separate each main by a gap of 32 pixels once again. And inside of each section, I'm going to give it a gap of maybe 24 pixels. So that should push these subsections apart a little bit. Honestly, maybe the main could have a gap of even 64, I think, and we could possibly pump the section up to a 32. So now you can see we just get some separation on our page. The next thing we want to do is get the profile image. So for that, I'm going to come over to LinkedIn and just use my LinkedIn photo. So if you come into LinkedIn, you can right click, copy the image address, and simply come into your HTML document and paste it inside of the source right here. We can see that now loads the link. As for this div, I'm going to give this a class of image container. And then if we come back into our styles.css, this is just underneath here, we're going to go image container. I'm going to give this a border radius of 100%, a maximum width of, let's start off trying 72 pixels. Let's see how big that is. And I'm going to give it an overflow of hidden. And I'm going to select the image within the image container and set the width equal to 100%, the aspect ratio equal to 1:1, and the object fit equal to cover. That's going to mean that the image spaces itself within the container. That's possibly a little bit small, but it's working. So I might just bring this up to 144. That's maybe a bit large. Let's go for 114 pixels. That's pretty nice. And I just noticed a spelling error. This should say name container, not main container. So if we just fix that, that's going to push those two apart once again. I might just come back into the section and pump that up to a 48 so it pushes this down a little bit. And the next thing we're going to do is style this div here, which is going to be class equal to stats container. So this is going to have a whole bunch of cool stats about us. And what we'll do in here, this is going to come above the image container. We kind of do it in the order of the document. This is going to have a display of flex. And for this one, we're going to align the items to stretch. And we're going to give it a gap equal to 24 pixels. We can't see the rest of the content yet. But now we're going to fill out these links. And what we're going to do for these links is come over to our GitHub repos. And we're just going to steal some stats from your GitHub page. So the first thing we're going to do is do the number of repos. So I have 182. So we're going to say in here 182 GitHub repositories. Inside of the next one, we're going to have a secondary stat. So for that, I'm just going to do followers. You could pick whatever stats you feel best represent you. So I'm going to go 268 followers. And then lastly, you could do the number of commits that you have. So it could be 753 commits this year. And for each of these, we're going to give them the class of darker text. And these divs up here, this is going to have a class of, we'll just call it stats. So we can select the stats class right here. If we come into the stats container, we've done the image, so now we can select stats. That's going to automatically assume the full height of our element. So we're going to want to say display flex direction column. And then for the divs within stats, we're going to set flex equal to 1, display flex align items center, and we'll give them a gap of 24 pixels. So now we can see they spread out and they kind of match the height of this element. And the next thing we're going to do is come over to Font Awesome Icons, and we're just going to choose some icons that match the kind of energy. So the first one is going to be GitHub stars, so we can choose a star. If we look at the icons, we'll just take this first star here. So if we select it, it comes up. We can copy this class directly into our document and we'll paste it right there. For the second one, we're going to just take the GitHub repo label. So here we have the GitHub. We can just copy that icon, paste it above the number of followers. And then for the next one, I think we're going to look up and see if we can, is there a trend one? We're going to take the trending upwards arrow, copy that and paste that above this last one right here. And if we come back to our document, we can see they show up nicely. The gap is a little bit large, so I might drop that to a 14 pixels. Maybe even an 8 pixels would do the trick. So now that sits nice and close. I'm going to go stats, select the div and then the icon, and I'm going to give it a font size equal to 1.3 EM, maybe even a 1.4 EM. That should boost up the size a little bit. And the other thing I'll just do is select stats div in the paragraph, and I'm going to bump up that font size a little bit to, actually I think I'm going to just boost all paragraph sizing. So we're going to come up to the top and right up where we start off styling everything, I'm just going to select the paragraph and give it a font size of 1.05 EM, just so it's ever so slightly larger on our home page. And then we can come back down the bottom and not worry about this one right here. The other thing I'm quickly going to do is actually come into the divs, and wherever we have an icon, I'm actually going to wrap it inside of a div. So we can see how I've done that just there. This might make the styling a little bit funky, so what we have to do is just make sure that we add the direct descendant to both of these, just that first style right there. And then what we can do is go stats, div, and then the divs within the divs, which is the direct parent of the icon container. We can give that a display of grid, a place items of center, and we can give it a minimum width of, we're going to say 40 pixels. And what that will do is just ensure that the alignment is at the start over here, so that the numbers all start at the same place, which is just going to look a lot tidier. And I also think I'm going to remove darker text from the paragraphs and just add it to the entire section so that it's a consistent solid color right there. So that's looking pretty good. We have our icons, our profile image. The next thing we want is a description. So the description is going to come in underneath the stats container right here. So we can pop in a paragraph, and this paragraph is going to say, "Hi, I'm James MacArthur, a software engineer," and I'm just going to fast forward this. Anyway, it's just a pretty simple paragraph, could be whatever you feel like putting in there, just a little blurb about yourself. And what we're going to do is select this paragraph. So I'm going to give it a class of about me, like that, so it's 2 words. I'm actually going to use the camel case for consistency. So about me, we can select that very simply as a class, and I'm going to give that a line height of 1.5 EM, just to increase the line height a little bit further to spread out the text. Now, one other thing I want to do while we're here is for the stats container, I actually want to set the default display to flex direction column. So if I do that, we can see that pushes everything into a column like so, and I'm also going to just come into the stats section and give everything a gap of 14 pixels right there to spread them out a little bit. And the reason I'm doing that is just because this is going to be a much nicer mobile layout. However, we don't want it to permanently stay like that. What we want is for, on the biggest screen, it to jump up to how it was. So we're going to add a media query where the minimum width for this to come into play is going to be 640 pixels. And in here, what I'm going to do is select the, we're going to need to select stats. It's going to be one of them. And in here, I'm going to set the gap to 0 pixels. And the other one I'm going to do is select the stats container right here and set the flex direction back to what it was at the start. So that's going to be stats container, and we'll set the flex direction to row. And now if I save that, it goes to the row, and then if I come to a smaller screen, we can see it jumps down to the vertical display, which is going to, once again, just make sure that our page is mobile responsive. So now we have our cool little paragraph that's looking all hunky-dory, very happy days. I'm actually going to target it quickly about me and add one extra style in here just to make it look a little bit cooler. I'm going to set a maximum width, or even better, just a width on it of 80% of the parent container on a large screen, and set the margin on the right hand side equal to auto. So what this is going to do, we'll see in a second, is on a bigger screen, it's just going to keep our paragraph slightly tighter until we come to the mobile screen, and then it will take up the whole space, but that's just going to keep it looking nice and clean. Underneath that, we have email me. Now for the email me, what I'm going to do is come in here and look up arrows, and we're going to look for the free ones specifically, so we'll make sure we select the free ones, and we're looking for an arrow that's on that diagonal. So let's see if we can find one. Well, actually, we can be pretty clever and just take this right-hand arrow right here, and we can pop that into this anchor tag. If we come into our page, we can see that show up right there. So this anchor tag is going to have a class of outreach. That can just be one word. And we can come into outreach and style that very easily. So we're going to, it's underneath about me, select outreach. We're going to give that a display of flex, align the item center, give it a gap of 24 pixels. That's going to say email me. I think we could probably drop that down to a 14. And now what we're going to do is select outreach and the icon within, and we're just going to transform it. We'll rotate it by minus 45 I think it's deg, just like that. Look at that, absolute genius. And the other thing we'll do is add the, oh, don't want to lose that, dark text class to it. Looks like it's darker text, not dark text. So that's just going to make it a darker class. And then once again, the other thing we'll do in here is give it a cursor pointer, and we're going to say dot outreach hover, we'll set the opacity down to 0.7, which is I think what we set the other one to as well. So yeah, we did exactly. So just for consistency, so now when we hover over it, it goes like that. However, we notice at the minute it's quite a long button. We don't want the cursor pointer happening out there. So we can fix that very easily by just setting the margin right to auto. And that will keep it over there, however, in addition to setting the width to fit content. So that should keep it to the side and remove everything else. So that's all happy days. Now underneath that, what we're going to do is have the latest projects. So this is going to say darker, it's going to have the darker text class. There we have latest projects showing up. And down here, what I'm going to do, this is going to be the class of project container. And then each div in here is going to be an actual project. So I'll say project item. And we'll come back and style these in a second. But firstly, for the project container, we can select that using the period beforehand. That's going to have a display of flex direction of column, and we'll give it a gap of 24 pixels. And each project, how it's going to look is we're going to have a div over here, and this one is going to have the date, so it might be Jan 24, 2024. And then underneath that, we're going to have another paragraph, and this one's going to be the name of the project. So it might be Swolenormous, for example. This is going to be one project. And then after that, what we're going to do is have a div, and this is going to have an image that we will fill out in a second. So we'll just set the source and the alt equal to Swolenormous dash image, self-closing tag. And I'm going to actually make this a description. So Swolenormous is a fitness app to turn you into a mass monstrosity. So if we save that, we can see it show up down here. Obviously, it looks pretty atrocious. So if we just select the project item very quickly, we'll give that a display of flex align items stretch. So that's going to push the image down the end. We'll make sure that we give it a gap of, I think in this case, we'll go 24 pixels. That's just going to push them apart a little bit. After that, what we'll do is we will target latest projects. So that's going to be latest projects right here. So I'll call this header text. We just want to put a slight margin bottom on this element. So we're going to say margin bottom of 24 pixels. That's just going to push the latest projects up more as a header. And then within the project item, we can say project item div nth first child. So the first div, not the image container div. And we can give this a display of flex direction of column, and a gap of 14 pixels, like so. And that's just going to push the date apart from the text a little bit. And for the date, this date element here, we're going to give this a class of darker text. So we can paste that in there. And now we can see a little bit how our little application is going to look. As for the image, so we're going to go project item div last child. So it's going to be the image containing div. We're going to give this an aspect ratio of 16:9. So that should be a video aspect ratio. Obviously, we'll need an image for it. So we're just going to come over to Swolenormous and snap a quick image. And with these images, we're going to create a new folder called public inside of our directory. And we're going to paste them into the public directory. So here's number one. We can see that in there. And I'm going to rename it to the name of the project, Swolenormous, like so. And now inside of our index, we can call it swolenormous.png. I think it's a PNG file. And we just want to make sure that we add /public/swolenormous on top. And now we get the image right here. For the image, we'll be wanting to set a maximum width on the parent element. So here I'll say maximum width is equal to 30% of the parent container. I'm going to set an overflow equal to hidden. And as for the .project item div last child, and then the image within, we're going to set the width to 100%, and the height to 100%, and the object fit to cover once again, similar to the above. And now we'll just get that little image display down there, which looks kind of cute. The other thing I'll do on this item here is just give it a border radius of maybe 8 pixels. That's just going to round the border on our images. And then I'll just snap some pictures of other random projects I've put together over the years. So this will be another one. And then I'll go to the roadmap. Kind of fun. Snap some quick pickies, and we'll copy them all into the public directory, one after another. Serve them up. Rename this one to AI letter. Rename the second one to the roadmap. You'll obviously want to use your projects, but once again, if you want to just fill them out for the minute, you'll be able to find these images in the GitHub repository. And then we're going to come into our index.html and we're going to duplicate this project item twice more, like so. So here are our 3 projects, and you can see that on a small screen the image also resizes nicely, which is just what you'd want. And then we can update some of the text. So this one, the second one can be October 24, 2023, and then the last one can be maybe the January the 14th, 2020, or whenever you develop them. This one is going to be AI Letter is a platform that aids you with prompt generation to develop the ultimate cover letters with ChatGPT. And then we can have the roadmap is the ultimate guide to learning to program that I wish I had when I was learning to code! Exclamation mark. And now we can just swap out the pictures. So this one's going to be AI letter. This one's going to be the roadmap. And now we've got our cute little pictures right there, which looks super slick. And likewise, if we come onto a mobile screen, we can see it looks absolutely great too. So that is amazing. The other thing we're just quickly going to add to our project is we're going to come up to where you have the main, and we're going to give it a padding bottom of 64 pixels as well. That's just going to mean we can scroll a bit lower than the bottom project. And the other thing I'm actually going to do is allow a user to select whether or not they want to go to the deployed code or the live code. And we can do that by coming up to this section just here. We're going to copy one of these divs that has the logo and the followers, and we're going to paste it underneath the section link so you can see it right here. Now obviously it's unstyled. We're going to say class is going to be link container, and I'm actually going to add a secondary div to wrap this, and I'm going to call this give this one the link item class. And then we're going to duplicate this class. So we'll paste that like that. This is just going to say GitHub very simply. And then this one is going to say live. However, we're also going to quickly swap out the secondary icon. So if we come into Font Awesome Icons, we're going to go for lightning. Here we'll take the bolt. If we copy the bolt icon, we can swap it out just here very simply. Now if we come back to our project, that's kind of what we're looking at. It doesn't look very slick just yet, but it will in a second. And now to style it, we're just going to select the link container. So we'll come underneath all of this stuff. The project item down here, we'll select the .link container. That's going to have a display of flex, align items of center, and we'll give it a gap of 32 pixels. That's going to be the first one. Now the second one is going to be the link item. That's going to have a display of flex as well. Align items center also. This one's only going to have a gap of 14 pixels. And I'll also set the color to var -- primary color. And the other thing I'll just quickly do is, since we've added some extra stuff in, we're just going to make sure that for these project items that they're direct descendants, just so that everything shows up as it should. And for the link item, I'm going to set the flex direction to row. and also just set it to important because it just seems to be misbehaving. So now we can see that's showing up as we would hope. I'm going to set the .link item paragraph size to a font size of 0.9 em. So that should shrink it down a little bit in addition to the icon size. And I might actually just drop the gap to an 8 pixels, just so it's nice and small, and also set that to important. So there are our two little links. Maybe I'll make that 14 again, and I think I'll change this one to a 24. And the other thing we have to do is actually change the link item itself to an anchor tag, because that's what it's going to be. So it's going to be an anchor tag, which means that these top ones have to have a target equal to underscore blank and an href, where in here we would paste the link. So in this instance, it's going to be swolenormous, so the href will be https://swolenormous.smalljames.com. I think that needs to be www. And then we can copy and paste this into each of them. This one you'd paste the link to the GitHub code. And now with that, we can copy that whole link container and just make sure it's included underneath all of these paragraphs, like so. So now we should have a little link to each of them. The other thing we'll do is when we come over to the link item, we're going to set the text decoration to none. That will remove that little underline. And I'm also going to say .link item on hover. We'll once again set the opacity to 0.7, and we'll also give it a cursor equal to pointer. So now when I hover over each of them, we can see that that is working as it should. So obviously you'll want to go through and swap out the rest of the links as well. The other thing I might quickly do is for the project container, I might just up that to a 32 pixels to spread them out a little bit further. And that's looking excellent. Now the last things we have to do is come back to the email me section. So that's right up here. And for this is going to have an href of mail to, and then you'll just enter your email. So mine's James is mathematical@gmail.com. So you just put yours in there, and then that will open up a mailing link for them. Let me just get that right. James is mathematical. Nice. And then the other one we have to quickly come up and touch is these top links up here at the top of our page. So we're just very simply going to give them both an href and a target equals underscore blank. That will ensure they open up in a new page. And this can just be a link to your GitHub. So if we come over to the GitHub, click on your profile, here you can take that link and paste it just in there. And we can do the exact same with LinkedIn. Take that link and paste it right there. So now when we come back to our site, and oh, that's done some funny styling to them. So we'll just quickly come up to but we can fix that by giving them both a class of darker text. That should change the text color. And we'll also just come up to the nav section, nav A. We'll go text decoration none. So that's how they should be. Now if I hit GitHub, it'll take me to the GitHub, likewise with the LinkedIn. And that's pretty much our whole project, looking absolutely cash money, super sleek, absolutely brilliant, everything you could want out of a portfolio project. 10 million billion times better than the one I deployed as my first website. With that all done, it's time to deploy our project, and for that we'll head over to Netlify. This will once again be linked in the description down below. You'll want to log in or create an account, and once we are logged in, we're going to hit Add New Site, and we're going to deploy manually. We'll look for the project folder to upload, so you'll just want to come to that project. We'll upload that folder, upload it anyway. And now we can go ahead and open that in a production deploy, and lo and behold, we have our absolutely excellent web portfolio live. The other thing we'll quickly do is come over to domain management, and in here we'll edit the site name to be Small James Portfolio, like that. So I'll just save that, and that's going to be the new link that we can share with absolutely everybody. Now that's technically it for the project. However, there's two more things that I would recommend you do. First is obviously share it on whatever social media platform. The visibility is great, and tag me in it. You can find links to my social medias at smalljames.com, which is linked in my bio. I would love to see what you guys come up with. However, the second thing I would recommend you do is actually experiment with modifying the project and making it a bit more your own. This is obviously a neat color palette, but you can come over to Tailwind CSS customizing colors. This will be linked in the description down below. And I'd actually recommend experimenting with some different ones. For example, here we have all of these beautiful colors. It's really easy to change how your project looks simply by taking a different blue, replacing the primary color in here, taking a darker blue, we'll go for the 400, pasting that in there, and likewise taking the darkest blue, and you'll probably have to make this one a little bit darker, so I'll paste it, and then we can select the darker and just pull it down a bit. And now if I save that and come back to my project, I've completely overhauled the color scheme to one that I honestly think is almost a bit better. It's down to my personal preference. Point is, it's really important to experiment with what you come up with. Anyway, that is the whole tutorial, my friends. Thank you so much for watching the video. If you have enjoyed, smash the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to post it online and tag me in the project, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace. Learning to code? If so, be sure to check out the Small James web development roadmap. Link is in the description down below, or dive straight in with these videos.